Hi. Today on What Makes a Man is a very special guest because many people consider me a Bitcoin OG, but Charlie Shrem is the Bitcoin OG. He's got a lot of stories to tell. He's got his own podcast where he tells all those stories, but hopefully we're going to dig deep today and take it back to before Bitcoin even started. Charlie, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, man. I'm glad we got you out here. You seem very content in Florida.
I love Florida. I think we love living down there. It's a slower pace. I was telling an Uber driver asked me today, actually, he was like, "You like living in Florida?" I said, I'll explain to you the difference. You go to Walgreens, you go to Rite Aid. In Florida, just the other day, I was down there and I was picking up a greeting card or something, and there was like one person in line in front of me. And he started chatting with the cashier about some nonsense for like 5 minutes. And any other city in the world, I'd be like, come on, let's go. You know what I did? I just closed my eyes and I took a nap standing up. And I waited. Because what else do I got going on?
That was the greatest gift living in Miami gave me. It taught me to slow my roll. Just to take the punches as they come. It really was the most valuable thing I learned after being in Silicon Valley and being in crypto, where everything's so fast paced, where you if you're not working, you feel like you're failing. Whereas in Florida, everyone's siesta time, and I love that.
It's definitely, you're right. So you have one extreme in this whole industry is like so fast. I guess we sought out the like complete radical opposite of that to find some happy medium in between.
Well, that's where, I mean, in 2018, I was burnt out on crypto. I was burnt out on Silicon Valley. And I was like, what is as far away I can get away from this, both physically and like spiritually and intellectually. And it was Miami. And it was a great choice. But obviously, for building the startup that I'm building now, Mademan, I had to come back to California. But I think Miami's somewhere on the horizon. But this is all recent history. Charlie, you were the first CEO of a venture-backed company in crypto. You were one of the first major
I forgot
evangelists.
that statistic. Wow. Yeah.
I mean that was one of your claims to fame back in the day. But I want to go back to before then, because you were how old when you first discovered Bitcoin?
I think I was a junior in college. So
I want to go back. I want to go back to when you were a toddler.
Oh, wow.
I want to talk about your early life, because your early life wouldn't necessarily lead you into the world of crypto.
No, I was destined to be a rabbi, actually, out of all things. Studying for 12
Orthodox
years.
Jewish?
Yep.
And your family was, you were in a Jewish community, right?
Very religious growing up. It was a nice kind of like bubble to live in growing up, not knowing anything outside of its existence. And for those people who live in it, it's really wonderful. It's for most people, but it's not for everyone, because a lot of people, we want to think for ourselves and go and spread our wings and find what we're meant on this earth to do.
And so what led you to doing that? Like, were you rebellious as a kid?
I was never rebellious. I was never that person at all. I loved the community. I loved growing up in it. I loved the people and the food and the culture and the tradition, but I never really understood why. And I always knew deep down that I wouldn't remain in that religious community forever. I knew that
it was this sense of community.
Yeah, the sense of community is amazing. And I try to set the tone over the last decade in Bitcoin to that community style that I grew up in is the same community that we built in Bitcoin. That same style of like camaraderie, love, and family, and working together and like doing things, helping each other out, being able to do like handshake deals and stuff like that. You can do those in early days of Bitcoin. That's how you can kind of do those in early days growing up in Brooklyn.
So what do you think it was in your early life that led you to, the Satoshi white paper and starting a Bitcoin company, like getting into computers, any sort of political philosophy?
That's a very interesting question. Growing up, I always wanted to be completely different, be hyper different than everyone else.
Which is not normal in an Orthodox Jewish.
I didn't fit in. Didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have like in real life friends. I wasn't very popular.
So you were on computers.
I was on computers. That was my world.
AIM.
What
was your screen name?
I was CS992.
Not even fun.
I was
I had some bad
on
ones.
the early IRC networks, mailing boards, forums, and this was the early 2000s. So 2004, 2005, 2006, and most people remember these were the years that people were first just getting cell phones in their pockets. I didn't get, like I remember getting my first cell phone at 2002. So this was like at a time when most people didn't not only not know how to even set up their own printer, set up their own router. Most people didn't really think that computers were going to be part of our everyday lives yet at this point. So here I was like figuring out this computer thing, and people would call me up after school and I'd go fix their printers, set up routers and cell phone antennas on their rooftops.
So you had a computer in your home and your parents just let you go to town on it?
Let me go to town. I love computers, love doing all that. But it wasn't about games. It was about connecting with, when you're one type of person and you're taught that you have to now make friends and fit into a mold within a pool of people in a classroom, it's a very small pool of people. If you're different, you're not necessarily going to be friends with all of those people, but our society makes us believe that we have to be. And then you feel different. Growing up, we're all growing up insecure socially, but that shouldn't have been. That's not fair. The internet gave me the ability to connect with other people who were very like myself, and gave me the comfort to know that Charlie could have actual friends.
And so what were the communities that you were engaging in?
Oh, mostly these Cyber Extreme and Evil Zone, these like gray hat IRC.
So the guys kind of doing mischievous shit.
Yeah,
on the
all that, just kind of like breaking shit and figuring out what works, what doesn't work, like trying to break into websites and see if you can. But
you're not really a coder, are you?
No, I'm a really bad developer. Like I tried to learn Python, and it's the one I don't tell any of my. Whenever I do like developing, coding projects or anything, I don't tell anyone because I want to be able to read the code and not let them know that I know what I'm looking at. But yeah, it's really beautiful.
And so those communities, led you to, what did you end up studying in college?
I don't even remember. I studied like finance and economics in college. The first thing I did, so I had like a startup. I had some money that I was making just doing some of this computer stuff. And then people contacted me that they had a lot of extra electronics in their warehouse. So I started a website and just kind of wrote the whole thing on my own. And we started a website and we just sold dailycheckout.com, sold a lot of things on the internet. And that gave me money. And here I was in college, but I was financially independent now, a little bit, $500-600 a week or whatever.
Good amount for a college student.
I know, and it was great. And I used that money to start traveling and visiting these people that I was meeting. So I go to Norway, and there's this like weird picture on my Facebook. I'm like the short kid in the middle, and these two goth guys, and they were my best friends though. I never seen pictures of them, and I wanted to go spend a month there, and that was the year that I decided, like in my head, that I was going to eventually like leave that community because I saw the world was an amazing place. And it was that year in those same IRC chat rooms when someone told me first about Bitcoin. And so here I was.
This was what, 2010?
2011.
2011.
Here I was like going through my own like, coming of age, and Bitcoin was also coming into its own, like, it was
being born.
It was being born, really, and we attached. I guess Bitcoin and I attached our destinies to each other for the last 10 years.
And well, going back to the Goths in Norway, how was that?
It was amazing.
Really?
It was amazing because we were supposed to, the three of us were supposed to meet up on the plane and like talk to each other and like but.
Oh, they were Norwegian.
We landed in UK and then we'd lay over and then it was like.
So wait, where were they from? America.
One guy was Norwegian and one guy was from Wales and one guy was from like somewhere in the UK somewhere. I don't remember.
But you weren't a goth.
No, not at all. I was just dressed like I am now, like in shorts and a t-shirt and flip flops.
That's really all I've ever seen.
and everyone got off the plane except for me and this one guy, and he was the goth guy and the nicest heart, the nicest guy in the world, but we never seen pictures of each other. So we had to wait for the whole clean to empty before we can figure out who each other were.
Right, you probably didn't even have working cell
Nothing.
phones
No,
there.
it was different times.
Yeah. Oh man, that thinking back, I mean, I was younger than you, but thinking back to the time when we didn't have cell phones, it was so different the way we communicated and got around.
I know, it really is.
And so, did you begin to have a falling out with your family as a result of this? You kind of perceived difference that you sense.
I started to have a falling out with my family. I think even starting to be years before, kind of around that, because even the fact of me working, even me going to college was very against like what the norm was.
Because you weren't studying to be a rabbi.
Yeah. And, not taking over my father's business in that sense, not wanting to marry.
Wait, is your father a rabbi?
No, he has last I heard, he was like vice president of the synagogue.
I got it.
So, it's all kind of like spiritual leaders and stuff like that. The jeweler.
So there's some entrepreneurship in your family.
Yeah, there's definitely some entrepreneurship in the blood. But I don't know, I want it to be different. Their religion doesn't allow for that. I had to be, when me leaving the religion, me leaving the community, choosing to leave it, before it was about Bitcoin, before I even met Courtney, who was then my girlfriend, is now my wife. Before it was all that, the falling out started, and I am at peace with it. Well, I say I am, but there's still definitely some anger or whatever. But the worst. That's it. And so basically, that's all you need to know about Bitcoin. There's nothing else you need to know, and that's how to make all the money. And thanks. That's a great episode, guys. We'll see y'all later. That was awesome, dude. I hope everyone's gonna secret. No, but the falling out came down to the fact that I wanted to not be in the religion anymore. I wanted to not marry
Judaism or like Orthodox Judaism?
Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Orthodoxy. I wanted to leave. And in order for my family to maintain their status in the community, for my sisters to be able to stay married with their husbands, for their kids to be in the schools that they're in, for my brother-in-laws to have the jobs that they have, my family has to sacrifice me. Yeah. I'm the sacrifice.
And then that's true in a lot of religious communities. Like you hear about that in Mormonism and Scientology and all sorts of different Christian sects. I mean, that to me is, the difference between faith and zealotry is when you can't separate your faith from your family, and you should be able to have, hold both of those. And
that's why the I don't believe in that concept of religion anymore because it's in the Bible, it's in the Torah that Abraham had to sacrifice Isaac potentially, and Abraham was, the binding of Isaac. It's that famous biblical story. So me being sacrificed and all the others too, there's hundreds of thousands of us in all of religions, millions of us who have our families sacrificed us for the betterment of the family of the community. It's written in their books. So they're justified. So I'll probably go the rest of my life never being a part of my family, never speak, but because it's in the fact that it's written in the book, that's supposed to be written by God. How could a God of my understanding be willing to, it doesn't make sense to me logically. It doesn't make sense to me illogically. And when I would ask the question, the rabbinical authority would tell me, well, if you can understand that, then you can be God. Therefore, we shouldn't even try to understand. Like, that's a cop-out.
But what's so funny is that you said you weren't rebellious as a kid, but coming to this determination is a serious form of rebellion given the context with which you grew up in. I mean, you must have there must have been a tremendous amount of cognitive dissonance.
Now that I think about it, in so much hindsight, I think back, there was so much cognitive dissonance. I would overcompensate by being involved in the synagogue's, Saturday activities, just because secretly I didn't believe a thing about it. I didn't believe a word about it. Like, I was going there and faking the praying. I was faking it. So you'd have to overcompensate so people would believe you. You know what I mean? So
Well,
I guess you're right. I guess you're right. There.
I mean, I get it. I mean, I remember going to Hebrew school and Sunday school, and I was like reformed, conservative Jew. I remember just being there, being like, I don't believe any of this shit. Like, why am I doing this? I told my parents I was becoming Buddhist and wasn't getting a bar mitzvah.
We love Buddhism so much. We love it. No, we read a lot of like, it just the you know what it is from. Religion has so much amazingness, the community, the family, the love. I tried to like extrapolate all the amazingness of all the communities that I was a part of growing up, and hopefully the tone of the goodness of that we created in the Bitcoin community over the last 10 years. You know, if my light touch helped with that we had a good community, you know, because there are some really good aspects to it. But then when you have the power. So if you look at Bitcoin, it's like a decentralized religion. It's all the good parts of the religion without any of the bad parts.
Yeah, well, there's some bad parts. It's you know, any form of money can be a form of control. And if you think about what religions are, they're forms of social control. Somebody with a lot of money has a form of control. But I do agree with you. But let's start to get into that.
Really quickly, I was going to say the same. You know, I like people, and I think our brains recognize things a lot faster than our conscious can. So it's like me leaving, maybe my brain or my subconscious knew it was eventually going to happen. That's why the cognitive dissonance started. That's why the rebellion started. Like, Well,
and probably starting that computer business was it's this small
it was
form
setting
of
it all up.
Yeah.
And then, but meeting you for the first time, and I still remember vividly, you know, like we were just kind of talking. This was like 2000, I don't remember, 15 or 14 or whatever it was. And you were just kind of, still in college.
It was definitely 2014 because I was still in school.
You were still in school.
And you were in house arrest.
Yeah. And you were asking me if what I thought about you like leaving college to go like jump in full time into Bitcoin. You already knew your answer, you know? So it's like you already were probably preparing for it for years. I can ask you these same questions that you're asking right now, and you know, here we are today. So.
Yeah, but I was a rebel my whole life.
You knew you were a rebel.
I mean, I was predestined for Bitcoin because it was the most rebellious, promising thing I could find. but you when you got into Bitcoin, it was before it was even rebellious. Like maybe on paper it sounded somewhat rebellious, but it wasn't particularly promising. Like people had tried internet money before. When you picked up on it on the IRC boards, it's interesting.
It's a very good question. I didn't let you finish your question.
No. We'll go with what you're gonna say.
I needed I was hyped. I was replacing my community. I needed that like love and affection constantly. And when I was like about to like jump ship and leave my community, I was a part of all these other internet communities, but they always fell apart because nothing tied them together.
Yeah. There wasn't a shared long-term vision. And Bitcoin was that common thread. But because Bitcoin is censorship resistant, because Bitcoin and largely now the larger part of that the crypto community, because it didn't matter who you were, where you're from, your religion, your race, your sex, your sexual anything. It didn't matter. It's not that it didn't matter. The questions were
never even asked. It wasn't even part of the paradigm.
So I mean,
but here you can be in that community,
and it starts with Satoshi though, because nobody knew who Satoshi was. We just knew that he liked pineapple pizza. Like that was his only personality trait.
How crazy is that? That we're thinking that he set that precedent to like, it's so doesn't matter.
Well, going back to the religion, I think that's a big part of the reason why Bitcoin and for the larger part, blockchain technology has been successful is because of that creation myth. It's because Satoshi is like a demigod. Because it's this unknown creator myth that people can create their own narratives around in their mind, and it becomes less about the person and more about the technology. And I think that was honestly existential to the success that Bitcoin has had.
100%. And that's why I think it was all planned, potentially. Like, overwhelming evidence that Satoshi is actually a group of time travelers from the future that are here to save us from ourselves.
I think it's a group of people. I don't know about the time travelers.
It has to be, because if you think about it, how else would time travelers be able to change the future, or aliens, or someone from not our dimension right now? I know everyone's like, this guy's a quack. I know, I'm just messing around. But if you think of the thought experiment for a second. If there was an existential threat to humanity in the future, and we did have the ability to come back in time, the only way we would believe it is if we didn't think it was time travelers from the future. So how else give us Bitcoin? So Satoshi had to come in, but it's, give up all that greed. It's inhumane. Give up all the greed, all the money, everything. Just give it all up. I'm gonna see like news, news articles,
Charlie Shrem claims
I have a lot of time
time travel.
I've had a lot of time to think,
I know. But what drew you to Bitcoin? Was it the white paper, or was it the community that you kind of got pulled into?
What really drew me to Bitcoin was the common thread at the time was I didn't like people telling me what I can't do or what I can do. I didn't like that. I would rebel against anyone saying no to me for anything. And I was like just using PayPal for all my business type of transactions. And PayPal was the only way at the time. Right. And PayPal like blocked me for I don't even remember why. I think I was helping a charity raise some money or something. And PayPal blocked me, and it was like a few $1,000s that they froze for like half a year. And I was like, F those guys, Yeah. The next day, it was like so serendipitous. The timing was so perfect. The next day when I had heard about Bitcoin, it was in an IRC chat room, and someone told me about it. And so I went to I can't even tell you if it was bitcoin.org, because I don't even know if bitcoin.org was even there. I think it was.
No, Satoshi created that in 2010. So yeah.
I went somewhere and downloaded the first Qt software, and my friend sent me some Bitcoin, and I was like, okay, this thing is kind of stupid though. Who cares? It's like a shitty UI app where we're sending these like basically like, I think I was, I was playing a lot of video games at the time. So I was like, it's in-game virtual currency there's an app, there's like a software for it. There's no app on my phone, like at the time, 2011.
It was
like, it's kind of stupid. Yeah. So like I remember literally saying these words, it's a downloadable version of PayPal to my friend. Like, this is so stupid. Who cares? But then we really started to get into it. And I started to understand that the transactions that we were doing were being maintained on this little like data file on my computer in real time. But it wasn't just my transactions. It was everyone else's transactions. So now I'm maintaining this ledger. And then I started to understand that this ledger is actually on like everyone else's computers too. And it's actually being updated in real time on everyone else's ledgers. So if Jeremy, you send me a transaction, that transaction was updated on everyone else's ledgers. So if someone said, oh, you can't do that, and tried to take our computers, the transaction was already done. So I immediately understood, like immediately in my head, I was like, what? Like data, blogs, like you can have not just like the ability to send someone money and no one can say no, but you can put up a blog, you can put up data through this blockchain. So
you were already thinking about the blockchain.
The mechanisms weren't there yet. I wasn't using the word blockchain, but I was like kind of like...
Even when I came in meaningfully in 2014, the term blockchain wasn't being used.
You had to think of the future.
They had the space between block and chain. That's the way Satoshi wrote it.
Censorship resistance. Yeah. And I didn't understand how... I didn't understand at the time... I didn't understand at the same time that scientists, physicists, mathematicians, the world's smartest people have been trying to figure out this Byzantine generals problem for thousands of years, and no one can do it. And I've had on my podcast some of these people, and I said, how did you do fault tolerance before the blockchain was invented? How did you do fault tolerance? And their mechanisms for doing it was like 6 out of 10 computers in a room. Stupid. This is the farthest we got.
Because
Satoshi solved
a
this.
trustless computer network.
So for taking Bitcoin away, Satoshi, aliens from the future, solve this 1,000-year-old problem.
Yeah. Well, and I've been called a heretic at times for saying that blockchain technology is the most important innovation to come out of Bitcoin rather than Bitcoin itself. And a lot, the maximalist type who are like, oh, you're going to hell for that.
Maximalists have to use maximalism to justify their own existence. That's all it is. They show up late to the game.
Or
they
their own unwillingness to embrace, a broader vision of what this technology can be. But no, I think the shift from Bitcoin to blockchain technology, which happened, after I met you, really, when
It was while I was in prison.
yeah,
It all changed.
I remember we had a dinner one night. It was one of the like Matt Rozak's like speakers
Yeah.
dinner. I think it was like in Vegas or something, and Brock and him give a presentation. They're like, look, we've spoken to some management consultants, and we need to rebrand this industry. Bitcoin just has too much negativity associated with it. We need to start calling this industry the blockchain industry. Kind of like that.
Yeah.
We just started referring.
Didn't like DLT take off for like distributed ledger technologies or something?
but that was different. We kind of distinguished that. That was like more like Hyperledger, what IBM was doing. But okay, I still want to rewind.
But that's when it really clicked. The censorship resistance.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. Everyone was like, "Oh, you understand? Like, these countries were going through all these like major I'm like, no, censorship resistance for Charlie.
Yeah.
So no one could tell me no. That's what it was about. It was about
no one
me
can shut
being
down
able
your
to,
online business.
Exactly. No one can shut down my own business. I was trying to be financially independent, and I saw PayPal and the government and people getting in my way. We have a right to be entrepreneurs, and we have a right to be successful and to live in this world and to be happy, to seek joy every single day. Who is this company to get in my way? Why were they allowed to do that?
So you're probably around like 22 at this point now.
Yeah.
So that kind of angst from the late teenage years is turning into really full-fledged rebellion at this point. Now you're getting rebellion.
I know, and I started to get a little bit too much too. Like
we'll get into that. At what point did it become clear that like you kind of were incommunicado with the family? Like was there ever a conversation?
I left. Like I had it was Courtney and I were dating for probably 6 months at this point, and I was having fights with my family a lot
because she's not Jewish.
And that was like one of the ultimate nails in the coffin for them. I had already left like emotionally, I had left spiritually, I had left physically. I was not living there, but they harbored some like hope that I would come back.
Well, yeah, I mean, going back to how strong that community was,
but I fell in love.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I found a partner who I knew was going to be there with me for whatever, life it was. I knew at this point that life was going to throw a crazy fucking journey at me, and it was just going to be nuts. I knew. I wasn't even arrested yet. It wasn't any of that yet, but I knew. And I felt that Courtney was and is and still we're married today. 4 years. We've been together 9 years and everything.
Happiest couple I've ever met in my life. Really something magical.
But you need a partner, and it was like so perfect when we met. Everything, it all worked out. But that was the ultimate nail in the coffin for them. And I remember like, oh man, people are gonna like really. I'm gonna get a lot of shit for this, but I don't think I've ever shared this story before. But the day I left. It was Rosh Hashanah. It was like the high holiday.
The highest.
And it was the only way it was like getting out of a cult. Our family all lived near each other. And I didn't plan any of this, like within the same. It was the only day that I knew that everyone would be in the same place, So I knew that this was my chance to be able to pack up everything I owned. I stayed home. I wasn't feeling well or whatever. The family went to services and to eat and everything. And I remember like just writing a letter and leaving it on my bed, taking all my stuff, putting everything in the car and just leaving. And that was probably the last time that I really ever like was in my house.
And how long was the letter?
I don't even remember what it said. It was very short. I do remember what it said. It was very short on a piece of stationery, and it just said, it's so funny because it's such a perfect letter, but I was writing it in such haste because I didn't want to like
you didn't have your smartphone to save the picture.
I didn't want to leave my parents the ability for follow-up.
Yeah.
Even a text or an email. I knew if I just left a letter, then it would just be like finality. And I remember it said something about me needing to go live my own life and living my life on my terms. And I even wrote, and I wasn't arrested yet, I need to make my own mistakes. I need to go and make my own mistakes because that's the only way I'm going to learn. It's the only way I'm going to seek fulfillment, figure out what the world was going to do. And that was it. I just needed to go and just do. I just felt such a pulling. I couldn't stay there anymore.
Have you spoken to them much at all?
You know, there have been times. This year was 2014. You know, this was 2013 when that happened. Actually, that was 2013 when I left. And there, you know, we'll talk. There have been a lot of stuff that have happened since then. We have tried. I know that they want to, and I know that I want to, and I know that there's a lot of anger and resentment on both sides, but there is a lot of love.
Well, you're a very loving person.
Thank you.
It's not like you're not like the rebel I was. I was like butting heads with my parents.
I love your parents though. They're awesome. And they live they're so nice. But I knew that I couldn't.
You didn't see the parent side,
right? But even if there's no framework for a relationship to exist with me and Courtney having a relationship with my family together.
And that's orthodoxy.
And I can't live a double life again. I can't do that again. I can't live a double life. I don't want to live a double life.
Hopefully there's a place where there's some mutual understanding where you can have visits and, you know, you can say.
Yeah, but how does that work? Like, what am I in jail again? Like,
no, you're not in jail, but, you know, I mean, look, I say this as someone that's had a very challenging relationship with my parents for the first 24 years of my life, and only in the past, you know, 4 or 5 years have I, you know, overcome all that resentment and anger and, you know, frustration that I had with them and been like, look, I'm only here because of them. Yeah. They love me, whether or not they agree with anything I do. They still love me. You know, I need, you know, I can't expect them to change, but I need to make some sort of effort to accommodate them to the extent that I can. And, you know, I don't think I will never live up to their hopes and dreams for me, but that's okay. You know, as long as I can, you know, be some sort of son to them. And you know, I look, your threshold is much higher because you weren't rebellious, and you know, right. you have an ideological separation. Ours was more complicated.
Love is supposed to be unconditional, and your parents are supposed to love you no matter what. And if you can go through life with that belief in your heart that no matter what, your parents will be there for you when you're at your lowest low, no matter what type of son you are, no matter if you need to go to rehab 8 times, it doesn't matter. You know, you watch movies, and we were just watching the Kaminsky Method or whatever. 8 times she went to rehab, the father was still there for her, picking her up. Your parents are there for you unconditionally. But I broke up with my family, and then I went through, you know, getting arrested, and then I was sitting in prison, you know, begging for my family's support back, like trying to have a relationship with them from the prison phone, even just asking for some money just so I can like live in there, because I had nothing. I'd lost everything. And here my parents were like putting conditions on their love. And that to me was like my ultimate nail in the coffin, because here I was, your son, I came out of that was their flesh and blood, their skin, you know, their everything. I came from them. And I'm sitting in prison. I'm asking for $30. And it's like, no. Or it's like, you're in there because God put you there. How could I have a relationship with that in the future? How could I rely on them ever being there when I need them?
Yeah, that's tough. Well, we're going to talk more about family, because I know a lot more about your new family now. Yeah. But let's talk about the progression from the chat rooms to starting your first crypto company, the first major crypto company. So
it was crazy Wild Westy years back then. It was like throwing shit at the wall to see what stick, building the plumbing and all the infrastructure because we needed it. Someone's like,
because you're like, this can't just be a downloadable PayPal.
It can't be the downloadable PayPal. We need to make this thing stick. And this was my community now. So I needed to survive and thrive. I took like ownership of the Bitcoin community, for lack of a better term. And I don't care if people say like that's stupid, because that was me. Like this was my community now for me. I wasn't like forcing my will on anyone ever.
No,
I never do that.
It was similar to me. I saw what you did, and I took a very similar route. I was like, before I was a CEO or a boss or any sort of entrepreneur, I was an evangelist for this technology, because unless that evangelism happened, it doesn't matter how great your company is, no one's gonna care about it.
You're right. Oh my God, you're so right. I had falling out with investors over that, because I wanted to just evangelize all the time, and it was hard for me to explain that you need to do both, because at the time I needed to do both, and I actually prayed for a year when it's like Bitcoin wouldn't need me to be the chief evangelist anymore. That was a lot of pressure, being the CEO of one of the largest companies for a year and a half, and the de facto place where everyone was buying and selling Bitcoin with each other.
So how did you become that company, though?
Because there was no other way to do it.
To buy Bitcoin.
To buy Bitcoin. There was no way to buy Bitcoin. The only way to buy Bitcoin was this Magic the Gathering online exchange, Mt. Gox. It was a website, and in order to get a credit there to even just click buy Bitcoin, you'd have to wire money to this guy's bank account in Japan, and you'd have to ask him permission first. So it's like, how can you create a whole ecosystem off of this? And the problem was, all the liquidity was there. All the liquidity, the few hundreds of Bitcoins that were being sold were there, or thousands, or whatever it was. It was like 99.9% of all of it was happening there, but it was a shitty website just run by an Excel spreadsheet. It was hacked together. So I met a guy on the internet forums, Gareth, and on the Bitcoin Talk forums in June 2011, and he goes, "Hey, we were talking. He's like, I actually have a better software that I wrote that we can get Bitcoin to people in like 20 minutes, and we can connect. It's a good idea." And I said, "Wow, like let's do that. Let's build that out. Like let's be 50-50 partners." And we actually ran that company 50-50 partners, and we still never met till today. Like we were always on the internet. I trusted him. I let him make all decisions related to tech. He let me make all decisions related to business. Like I could use his signature if I needed to. Like we had full trust, because there was nothing to lose. Like what did you have to lose at that point? Like, we'll be partners. Like who cares? Yeah. What's the worst case is that you're in the same place you were before you started. Yeah. And that's my view on anything. If do anything where when it's over, if you fail, you're in the same place you were when you started, do it. Unless it's going to take you a lot of time, because time is the only finite resource, like time. But so we started BitInstant. Actually, the first name of the company was Fast Mt. Gox Pay, because we were like going to be fast. You can't start a competitor and then throw your
competitor's name
inside. It's like
amateur
man. You can't throw your competitors in there, but that's so we said we came up with something. BitInstant. BitInstant was the company. And it just took off. And it took off like crazy. People started buying.
Just through the forums, Reddit.
We do no advertising.
Yeah.
Everyone just knew that here was an easier way to buy Bitcoin. And all we did was connect with banking softwares. And eventually I made deals with like 7-Eleven, CVS, Walmart's, to Wait and Read. We had like 1 million locations at our peak where you can walk into you can go to our website, say I want to buy $500 worth of Bitcoin, print out, or on your phone get a QR code, go to 7-Eleven, scan the QR code, hand him the money, and within 20 minutes have your Bitcoin. This was 2011. And it just, when you can do that and people were tangibly able to go buy Bitcoin, every CEO of every major Bitcoin company, of every fund, of every person, anyone who ever bought Bitcoin in those years bought from BitInstant, 1,000%. And that was amazing. That was a lot of fun.
Okay, so there are 2 great books written about this and other crazy stories from the early days. You've got Ben Mesrick's Bitcoin Billionaires, and then there's really Nate Popper's Digital Gold, and many others. But those
Brian Eha wrote one too.
Oh, Brian Eha. What was it? I'm actually in that one.
Yeah, you're in that one. You're in all of them too, I think.
I don't. But yeah, I had a larger feature.
It's funny. Go to books.google.com and type your name in quotes, and you'll see you're in textbooks.
I'm in textbooks.
You're in textbooks. It's cool. It's like kids are learning
my
in
tweets
Oregon.
Are in textbooks.
Yeah, they are.
That's
It's kind of cool. Like we were a part of something. Not we did. We were a part of, because we all did it. We were a part of
We
something.
just had a role.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but so let's talk about the Ibiza trip though, because this was obviously a formative moment in the history of Bitcoin.
So the Ibiza trip was one that I didn't actually get to go on, because it was like a whole thing. My partner at the time, David, ended up like going to Ibiza with his wife on his own, and he was the one who met Cameron and Tyler and gave them the beach chairs.
The story I always heard was that you met them in Ibiza.
No. David met them and then called me on speakerphone right there, and I started pitching Bitcoin to them on the beach.
That's right.
But I was not in Ibiza. I was here. I mean, I'll take credit for it, but
so this is Cameron and Tyler.
I have to give. If people think I'm like hyper and antsy, this guy David, I got to give him so much credit because he's so hyper. But he was like, saw them on the beach, and he's like chasing them
Army
down.
Hammer, times two.
Yeah. The movie had just come out.
Yeah.
So to his credit, he like chased them down. He's like, guys, you got to hear about this Bitcoin thing. Hold on, Charlie, are you still there? It's like, yeah, David, what? Yeah, hold on. Do you know Cameron and Tyler? You know the Sage Social. That's how he talks. Social network. Yeah, I was like, what? He's like, tell him about Bitcoin. Tell him about Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, guys, Bitcoin's amazing. Like, I'm sitting here in my parents' basement, Jewish Brooklyn, like, talking about Bitcoin. What do you want to know? And then like, it wasn't until like 2 weeks later that they did their own research on Bitcoin. And then they like, oh shit, this thing is actually pretty cool. Then they emailed me out of the blue.
And look, to give you credit and to give them credit, that's where most people miss out.
Yeah,
you hear about it, your interest is piqued, then you go online, you're like, all right, I don't know if this is for me. I mean, I discovered Bitcoin actually in 2011. It was in Rolling Stone because they had their hot issue, and it was the hot black market Amazon.com, and it was about the Silk Road, and they mentioned Bitcoin, and so I went about the Silk Road, but then
it's probably where most people got into Bitcoin,
and then I tried to get Bitcoin, and I was like, this is too hard. I don't even know BitInstant was around.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
and it's so funny.
It was just Mt. Gox. I went to Mt. Gox. I was like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah. Downloading Tor and accessing Silk Road was easy. Just to browse and to look was easier than getting Bitcoin.
Oh, way easier.
Like getting those Bitcoins were impossible.
And it was one of the coolest experiences ever. As someone that was like big into drugs, I was like, this is the most amazing thing ever. I was a freshman.
It's funny because
in
now Canada models their whole like cannabis. Because Canada, they run, government sells all the cannabis online. They modeled it after Silk Road. It like looks exactly the same. It's like, wow, this guy Ross, who's sitting in jail for like multiple life sentences, actually came up with a really good idea for like an online drug marketplace. So the Canadian government fucking uses it. Can I curse on your show?
Yes.
Sorry.
I
mean, come on. Like, I don't know about the whole, like, I was in prison during the whole Ross debacle. So I can't make a lot of comments because I just don't know enough about everything.
Well, if you want a really horrible depiction, watch the Silk Road movie. I watched it the other day. It's awful.
All I know is
I followed the case like intently, and it is one of the most ridiculous miscarriages of justice. You think about what happened with you.
It just doesn't make sense. Like
it's setting an example.
If you told him right now, sorry to interrupt you.
No, go.
If you told him right now, Ross, you don't have multiple life sentences, you'll get out in 40 years from now, he would probably jump for joy. Because give him an end date.
He just wants a chance.
I'm surprised he hasn't tried to kill himself multiple times. If I was in his position, I don't know. Like to not have an end date. That's the only thing that kept me going. I don't know how he's going. I don't honestly know how he keeps himself going.
He makes me want to run for president just so I can pardon him.
Well, if there are politicians listening to this show, I know they are, but I'm trying to get a pardon myself, but Ross needs one too.
Well, he needs one more than anyone because he's still rotting away there.
It sucks.
But so let's talk how things escalate. So the Winklevi go and learn about it, and they're like, well, looks like this is the only company to invest in.
That's literally what happened. Like the first venture back started. There's like no other companies.
Eric had Satoshi Dice, right? Like that was up and running.
Satoshi Dice wasn't a company. Eric was the chief marketing officer of BitInstant. So Satoshi Dice was his pet project that he was working in the other room.
But that was probably making more money than
It was.
this.
and I never like even thought.
I mean, what? It was like hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin were being
he was
just
killing it.
gambled away on that site.
If I looked at the BitInstant office as an incubator, I would have a stake in every company from Coinbase to BitPay. Because even Brian Armstrong to start Coinbase, I don't know what the book says or he's writing in his book, but I'll tell you the real story of how Coinbase was launched. If anyone wants to know, we could do a whole.
I'm sure everyone wants to know.
But freaking, he called me, Roger Ver, Tony Galippi, all the people who from BitPay, me, all the people who were running companies. And he brought us all to his house for a barbecue, and he was like,
"Is this in San Francisco?"
This is in the Valley, down in like Palo Alto or something. And he was like working for Airbnb, and it was all under the guise of like, yeah, maybe Airbnb will accept Bitcoin, but then maybe we shouldn't have been so forthcoming with all of our business models. But Coinbase was basically launched a few months later as an amalgamation of the three of our companies. But at the same time, I never looked at it bitterly. And I was so happy when he launched it because I felt such a relief. Here, finally, Silicon Valley, we have embracing it. We have a company.
Well, and he was legit.
I can take a state. He was legit.
At that time, a former like high-ranking guy at Airbnb, that was like one of the most legit people he had working in the industry.
So that was pretty awesome. But going back to Cameron and Tyler, so BitInstant was killing it. I was using all the money I had to continue funding it. Because it just required so much cash flow to run. We were making money, but in order to scale, we needed more cash flow. And so I was even going to people like, you can invest in my company, you can have all the money back. Like the money is not being spent even. It's just cash flow. It's the way we run we need Bitcoin in circulation as supply to sell to people. And then Walmarts and the CVSs will then settle with us a week later. So we just need cash flow. And couldn't raise money from anyone. I was going hat in hand. I was giving away. I was selling my soul to the devil. Couldn't raise money from anyone. Roger Ver put in $100,000 into the company, and it was amazing. But we needed to continue. We needed to continue growing. And when I met finally Cameron and Tyler, they wanted to invest like significant amount of money, but they were like the ability to scale up, not just BitInstant. But I saw them, I'm giving them so much credit. I saw them as the ability to actually scale up this industry. And that made me very happy because I don't know if people will look at it like, not that I care what people think, but it's like I felt the weight of Bitcoin's success but survival on my shoulders for so long. And it was because if it failed, then I would have to go back to my family hat in hand into the community. So I needed this thing to succeed for my own survival, for my own sake. And at the time, it was like just a few dozen of us. And that's why till today, I take things so personally sometimes when when people like, you talk about maximalism. I don't believe the maximalists have the right to even define what Bitcoin maximalism is because they showed up late. Who are you? Like, you can't just come along here and claim.
You were there before.
Yeah, like F you. This is my thing, not your thing. Go find someone else to maximalize or whatever. And so I love just calling it out on Twitter and stuff like that. It's like, you have no right. You have no right. This whole thing is about community, about love, about building projects, about doing shit, about trying it out. And now you're here to tell me that we have to follow this one. It's like religion all over again. One God, one. No, we want to like launch tokens. We want to write software. We want to create new blockchains. We want to see what works and what doesn't. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think Satoshi would be very proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, I it's hard to see that not being the case. So let's talk about when things start to kind of get out of hand.
Yeah, it was great. So the company was growing by like leaps and bounds, and at the time, it's funny.
What 2012, 2013?
This was like the let's just call it New Year's going into 2013. We were peaking. 30,000 customers, which was like the most. That means 30,000 people are like actually
interested in Bitcoin.
Yeah, interested in Bitcoin. Like, it's a huge amount of people. Like now, I'm an investor in Voyager, and they just announced like they added on like another 1 million verified accounts in 1 month, and I'm like, Oh my God, 30,000 over the 1 year lifetime. We've come such a long way. But everything was crazy, and I was the only employee at the time. But we were like, Eric was starting to help out, and we were growing, and we were hiring more people and everything like that. There was no regulation. The word Bitcoin, it's crazy to think now. The word Bitcoin or crypto or blockchain, you couldn't go to a government website and find that word anywhere. Zero, no government officials, no banks, no
NSA was probably paying attention.
Yeah, but like no state, but there's no public public facing information from anyone about anywhere about anything.
It wasn't on anyone's radar. No one cared.
They didn't care.
Yeah.
It was nothing.
So you weren't thinking really about the law.
We were just trying to do the best we can, trying to make things up. You know, the lawyers were like, yeah, this is what we think, how we think you should run. Like, no one knew ever. And then in 2013, government came out with...
It was FINRA, right?
It was the first, like, FINRA or FinCEN. It was the first major, first time...
Declaration about Bitcoin.
Declaration about Bitcoin. Basically saying that Bitcoin is now like under the IRS and Department of Treasury's like jurisdiction, basically. That's really all of it said, and it was like some other stuff, rules and requirements.
Yeah, and that it would be treated like property.
Yeah. And at that point, my lawyers were like, well, all those things that we thought we knew, we now realize we were wrong, and you got to shut down. And literally the call was like, we have to shut down the company today. And we did. BitInstant had to cease to exist within 1 day.
And when you're saying this is around New Year's?
This was around July of... I fast forward a little bit
2013
to when we actually shut down, but this was 2013, so it was like 6 months into 2013.
But things were already kind of unwinding.
It was crazy. It was getting even.
There's
crazy.
a documentary, The Rise and Rise of Bitcoin. It's
Our
kind
software
of
was failing. Things
company.
weren't working. I was on TV.
You hadn't built it to scale.
Yeah. Oh, we couldn't even. I was running everything like on my phone. I was doing customer service, and I was doing media and press, talking shit about the government all day. I should have never been doing that.
Well, I remember because you were when I got into the industry, one of the only real young, kind of reasonable sounding people in the industry.
I was not crazy.
A lot of the libertarian, anarchist dingbat types. But, I remember that you had this GQ feature story.
I remember.
That was the bad one. I was like, I won't hire anyone unless they smoke weed with me or get drunk. And I was oh.
I know. And the thing is about that, I think
which I can relate to. But
it came out I remember literally this is what GQ, and just a lesson for anyone who is doing press. That statement is. The background behind that statement was basically I was sitting with him doing an interview and explaining how before I hire you for or partner with you in any business, I need to see how you are loose-lipped. Right. I need to see if I can trust you. I need to see if I can put loyalty in you.
Instead, they just put that in big text.
Yeah, it's he won't hire. That's not what I was saying. I was saying that I need to see you when you're very comfortable and loose. However it is, you can do yoga or, we can go pick flowers if that's what you're into.
No, it's funny, and this is kind of mean, but one thing I used to say, especially after you got arrested, is I'm not going to make the same mistakes Charlie did, because people looked at me and they saw a lot of myself or a lot of you and me, and I was like, no, but I saw the things he did wrong. But then you realize how misled you can get by journalists, and in 2017, 2018, the same thing happened to me. My entire character got flattened. I got depicted as this crypto playboy, tech bro douche, and it hurt.
But you always had class.
Yeah, I mean, look, you couldn't take my dignity away, but you could make me seem as undignified as possible while not just egregiously misquoting me. But, it was a hard lesson to learn.
I just love how you live your life so unapologetically, and you know what you want, and you don't care if other people are judging you for it one way or the other, because I look at that, it's I want to be that person. Inside, I'm an introvert, and I'm so what's the word, low self-esteem person, and so I that ability. I have some friends and people that I know that we know for a long time, and it's just they're like you. They live their life the way, and that's a lot of the Bitcoiners that we know.
Well, you know, though, it's funny that you say that because I'm an introverted extrovert. Like I'm very extroverted with people I know, very introverted with people I don't. But one thing I discovered, and this is this year, like in the past, 6 months or so, I realized that my low self-esteem from adolescence actually never went away.
It's the same, right?
What I did was I learned in adolescence to mask that low self-esteem with that, unapologetic, unabashed, just, fuck all attitude. But, as I'm trying to like mature emotionally and spiritually.
It's a hard thing to do, mature emotionally.
No.
Like consciously, it's very, I'm trying.
Well, without a romantic partner that makes you really look outside of yourself, I don't know how possible it is. I think love is one of the few things, especially for men, that enables us to do that.
Perspective and empathy is very important.
But yeah, for me, it's actually I'm not dissimilar in that I've come to terms in the past few months that I do have low self-esteem and that I just haven't overcome some of the constantly being told I was wrong and a rebel, and just a fuck up my whole life, and I realized how much I internalized it, and I owned it. I owned being that miscreant, outcast, rebel type, and it became a big part of my persona. But I actually am not really a fuck up anymore, and so I have to transcend that.
So how do you not have like imposter syndrome all the time? Even when I'm making deals, I have such. I'm making a deal right now. I'm like, oh my god, I feel so dirty negotiating because I feel such imposter syndrome. But I deserve everything that I asked for in the deal.
I look, as someone that's very aware of my privilege. Like people in crypto hate talking about this, but the fact that white male, born into a well-educated, middle-class family in America. I have all the privilege in the world. I didn't need a silver spoon to have everything I needed to succeed. And I was able to, get arrested over a half dozen times and getting kicked out of multiple schools and still be where I am today. And I'm not saying it would be impossible if you didn't look like me, but it was very much possible because I did look like me. That's where the imposter syndrome comes in. It's like, what if I had been black or a woman? Like, and that burdens me a lot. It's something that I think about a lot and I dwell on, and it's something I'm working on. And I have a social impact fund. I do a ton of philanthropy. I try to make the world more equitable, and I do my part to give back however I can. But it's still something that bothers me, just knowing that in the back of my mind, and also knowing that most of the world doesn't see that.
That's what saddens me.
They see me and they see like the American dream. Like I've had multiple foreign press outlets come to me and they cover me doing features on the American dream because they read about my story in crypto.
They don't include the hardships. They don't. Sometimes
they don't include the privilege. Like I look. I looked like most of the guys at the Bitcoin conferences. I was younger. Yeah. I was a bit more liberal than them, but generally, like they were very comfortable around me. Like, do you remember how hard it was to be a woman in the industry back then? It was like
impossible.
It was like if you were
Courtney was the only girl at Bitcoin 2013.
Right. If you were a woman,
besides for the press,
if you were a woman at a Bitcoin conference, didn't matter what your role was, what you did, you were on the Women in Bitcoin panel.
It was weird. I mean, yeah, that's what
every single time. And that was true for like up until like 2015, 2016.
It's so funny.
It was so bad. And I would say to these organizers, do you know how bad this looks?
Charlie's wife, Tony's sister. It's like you would just get all the crypto wives. It's like crypto wives. It's like stupid. Why can't it just be about
someone's personal experience, their own narrative?
No, you're right.
That's all that we were talking about.
But that's just us overcompensating for our own guilt, I feel the industry. No, because we're a bunch of nerds and like misfits.
Well, I think there's a lot of lack of guilt. I mean, it was amazing 2 weeks ago in Miami. I was able to raise shatter fundraising records for the Burning Man Foundation, which was amazing. It was all crypto people.
Thank you for that.
It was
on
incredible.
Behalf of all the stores on Melrose who sell festival wear. Thank you so much.
But it was funny because my first venture into crypto was the Blockchain Education Network, this educational nonprofit.
That was your first thing.
That was. I did not start a company. I didn't invest. I literally started a nonprofit organization, which was was totally bizarre in retrospect, but it's the only thing I knew I could do, and the organization obviously worked out. But it's been so hard over the years to get these crypto people. Many of them who have hired students from that like had a Bitcoin club at their school to donate $10,000 to my nonprofit, even though it's an easy tax write-off. Crypto people, getting people to
we're gonna do that. We're gonna change that. I really want to focus on that, and I think we should start to like these ride-along things where it's like, listen, I'm gonna put this amount of my money towards this. Right now, I'm trying to we're working with a bunch of people. We're trying to move 1,000 elephants that are about to be culled in South Africa. We're trying to move them to the DRC. There's a bunch of people involved. Courtney can tell you more, but it's like $2 million to do that. So I'm like, well, what if I commit a certain amount of money, how many people ride along? Yeah. Just follow me. Whatever I do.
And that's what worked so well with the Burning Man. I made a big pledge.
I love that.
A lot of these guys knew they're much wealthier than me, and they were equally as big of Burning Man people, and they knew they'd look like assholes if they didn't, and I put them on the spot, and it worked. But all right, so
going back to Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, and going back to your story, because this is, I think you spent more time in prison than anyone that I spend a lot of time around. So let's talk about that, how that happened.
So what was happening was at this time, we were peaking in terms of crypto. This is the time that Bitcoin was going through its $1,000 bubble. Just to give people context.
Is first time it was on every news website. It was on Bloomberg.
At $1,200 on Mt. Gox, and BitStamp. Those were the only two exchanges, or whatever it was back then. And so this was during that time. We were peaking. We were all over the news. And I was that person. I was that face.
So BitInstant was shut down, but you were still... I forgot that.
Yeah, BitInstant had shut down.
But you were still that evangelist.
I was still crazy evangelizing. I was
I remember you would be on Bloomberg.
We founded the Bitcoin Foundation a year previously, and I loved I had a full-time job as the vice chairman of the foundation, and I loved it. My job was just to go around evangelizing Bitcoin. I was like, wow, I have the best job. I founded this foundation, and the foundation ended up becoming something, in my absence, becoming something that is not what I founded it to be. But we founded it to just be because, we had this whole community. But you didn't have an LLC around the community. So I was like, let's create this LLC entity that we can advocate for ourselves. That's all the foundation was meant. It was Gavin and me and Roger and Mark Carpelis in a cafe in freaking Vienna, just putting it all together. It was so, there was no major paperwork or law firms. It was just doing it for ourselves. And so I was doing the foundation stuff, and I loved it. I loved it so much. And we were in Amsterdam at a conference in January. It was the first month. It was New Year's of 2014. So it was the first month of 2014. And we were coming home from a conference, and we were coming back to America because...
Oh, that conference was supposed to be crazy. That was before my first conference.
Come back to America because there was a big Senate hearing on Bitcoin. It was the first time the government was going to talk about Bitcoin, for the first time. And when I landed at JFK, Courtney and I were dating, and I landed at JFK, and I was surrounded at customs by all these agents.
I literally watched it on television, you being taken away.
And I was just what is going on? It was a Sunday night. I was tired after a long flight, and you're just exhausted, and here the FBI agents are holding Courtney by the arm and having her point out our luggage. And were they arresting her? Why were they, it was a little aggressive or whatever, but here we are in JFK, and I don't know what's going on. One of the agents was actually very nice. He gave me a Pepsi, really like him. But I didn't even know I was being arrested for.
Yeah.
And then
they didn't tell you right then.
Well, remember, even I was told I was being arrested for something different, and I had to read the arrest warrant myself as I'm sitting in the freaking prison cell inside JFK Airport. I'm reading my own arrest warrant and my charges and my complaint, and it was 3. It was money laundering, unlicensed money transmission, and failure to file suspicious activity reports. And the thing is that I actually did break the law. You know, that's the
Yeah, no,
hardest part.
I've read
That's
the
what hit-
case.
yeah.
You definitely broke the law.
That's what hit me here really hard. I was like, Charlie, you are
because
so
you hadn't
fucking
really
stupid.
you hadn't really internalized that previously.
I didn't know anything. No,
because
I was running.
up until they told you to shut it down and that guidance had come out, you didn't even think about the law.
I never thought about anything. We were just
nobody was talking about
the law
money
came out, we
transmission
shut down.
laws.
No one said money. I didn't even know that money transmission, anything, money laundering, like crazy thing. And listen, at the end of the day, I took it over the edge because I allowed that customer. There was a customer, so the kid,
I mean, there's that damning quote.
They have one customer who emailed me, and he was like, "I'm selling, my Bitcoin on Silk Road," and I knew he was doing it, and I responded and said, like, "I know what you're doing. Don't do it." And I let him continue doing it.
Then they had an email to one of your employees being like, he's giving us so much money, like, just let him go. That was the damning one.
And so here I was, like, I knew immediately that like I was in some deep shit.
Yeah.
And now this Bitcoin thing is money. Here I broke the law.
But was there ever a moment when you were like, well, look at the financial crisis. These banks have been proven to like
everyone else was doing that for me. All the pundits were on TV
defending
all the people were defending me.
Everyone was defending me. He's there like he's a kid. Yeah.
But the best thing you can do is just shut your mouth. Shut up. Like, don't be like Billy McFarland from the Fire Festival. And you probably
hadn't shut your mouth for 4 years at that point.
At that point, finally, for the first time, I shut my mouth. And I shut up. And the times that I did talk to the press, I got in trouble. Like, I would go to the New York Times and I would say, like, yeah, the government just wants a Bitcoiner. And then the New York Times prints that. The judge wakes up and fucking reads that. And here I am getting called into court, not for anything to do with my case, just so the judge can yell at me. And I have so much respect for that judge. I love him so much. He really could have made my life bad, and he didn't. But like everything that happened to me,
what were you facing?
They wanted like 30 years. Everything that happened to me was my own fault. It was my own doing. I had made a mistake as a kid, and I had to, because now Bitcoin was this money thing, I had to fucking face some hard times, some hard facts, some hard truth here.
Well, this is why I really admire you. This is why when you were on house arrest and we first got connected, I don't even know who connected us.
I think you just like emailed me. You were like, I'm downstairs from your apartment. Can I come upstairs? No, this guy's the ultimate hustler.
No. Because the first time we met was, I think, or I spoke to you, it was in Chicago. You had the telepresence robot.
Oh yeah.
And we spoke you were my profile picture. Yeah.
Jake Denelt. Yeah. Rest in peace. He had carried him that. Yeah, when I was under house arrest, we had a robot that was going to Bitcoin conferences so I can speak.
Yeah, no, and but the reason, like I had really liked you before you got arrested and admired what you were doing, and then your humility. And like, yes, there were some bad quotes after you got arrested, but really your humility, especially when I spoke to you about the fact that you had fucked up and really taking ownership, because that's, I'd been arrested 7 times. I had never taken ownership. Like it took me a long time to come to terms with my own fuckery, but did you have like a come to God moment when you were in that jail cell or, on bond or
house arrest? I guess it really hit me when I realized how seriously the government was taking my case. And at that point, and the fact that the details were all there.
And Ross had already been arrested.
Ross had been arrested. I knew that at least I knew that I was guilty. I was pleading guilty. I knew I was pleading guilty for like the first month or two that I was arrested.
And your lawyers thought you should?
Of course.
Because you thought you'd get a better deal.
Oh my, it's going to trial, I would lose. I was guilty. Like, why would I even, so I mean, could have been so much worse, So I knew that I was hoping that I would, yes, I'd be a felon, but I'd get probation. I was like, I didn't think I'd actually do time.
No, I remember that.
I really didn't think I would do time.
You were both of you were.
I was really thinking that
you were very optimistic back then.
The government was so stringent on the house arrest and and I was like not understanding why. I was like, I'm not going to run. Why would I run?
Well, you have been flying around the world for the past few years and they knew you had crypto.
So that's really what it was. And I was like thinking that maybe they were being so hard on the house arrest part because I won't get time. I was even telling my like pretrial officer, you'll be my probation officer.
That would be your time served or something. Yeah.
And that was a mistake too. And so the come to Jesus moment was really that, like, even getting probation was going to be a really, really shitty thing. And even until my sentencing, I think maybe I knew deep down that I would get some time, but I was just hoping that I wouldn't. But I had to like start to prepare, you have to start preparing yourself. It's like a whole process.
And so when the verdict was read to you and you knew, what was the sentence?
So you go through, it's like a whole year process and it's a whole thing. But then you come down to the sentencing date. And at this point, you've already like either been found guilty or you pled guilty. And so the sentencing is an amalgamation of like your family and friends sending letters. And I had hundreds of letters, people like doing things and people like writing the judge. And the judge then basically like has all these reports because the pretrial officer writes a whole report on you. The government will write a report on you. Your lawyer can prepare a package. The judge reads all this. Your life is like
in his hands.
Oh my God. It's like for 7 years, my balls were in someone else's hands, just being passed over from hand to hand to hand. I finally like got them back, just when I got off probation 2 years ago.
I remember.
And that was an amazing thing. But like, I didn't know what feeling I would feel. And at sentencing, I remember my lawyer was sitting next to me and I was thinking I could have gotten probation, but the government was advocating for 5 years. And at this point, because I pled down, and I remember when the judge said it was going to be 24 months, I was like, it was such a huge sigh of relief. Till today, I've never felt more relief than I have in that moment.
When you knew you were going to federal prison for 2
how weird
years.
is that? Till today, years later.
Because it could have been worse.
Exactly. Because I finally had a light at the end of the tunnel. That's why I say like Ross needs that.
Yeah.
Because at that point, like, I don't know, man, like my family, so not only about this, but we didn't even touch on the fact that like my family, basically I had left. Remember, I left.
Yeah.
And so my family had used the arrest and the fact that I had $1 million bond on me, and they were the only people that I knew, to like force me back into the community. And they forced Courtney and I to break up. And they would even tell me, if we find out you guys are together, we're going to call up the judge and send you back to prison. And actually,
your family paid the bond.
They put their house up as like as a collateral. And I had to like live with them. I had to move back in their basement, break up with Courtney, go to synagogue. It was like it was like my worst nightmare.
Oh my God.
It was like as if my parents, oh my God.
That.
Yeah. It was the first 3 months of house arrest were this. And I just drank. I was trying to like drink myself into like death at this point. I was just like, oh, fuck it. So I just started drinking a lot and just not caring about life anymore. And I was checked out. And Courtney would, we actually did stay together, saved my life, because talking on the phone for hours every day through what I was going through, what we were going through at this time. And then when my parents found out that we were still together 3 months into it, they actually.
But were you seeing each other?
No, not even physically. We were just on the phone. I just needed someone to help me through, like,
because you couldn't talk to that. I mean,
no, like, and so like, again, like, no, you can't, like, the one thing that you want, it's like, no, right? Like, save my life. And so when they found out that we were together, they actually did try to pull the bond. And all of a sudden, federal court became family court. And here we have, like, it's just crazy. And so the judge is like, what is going on here? And we had to go through a whole thing of like my parents
explaining that your parents,
it was a whole thing, and I
don't want your
details.
Gentile girlfriend.
Yeah, exactly. And thankfully, the judge, I got so much respect for him. He like allowed me to move out of the house and live on my own with Courtney, up with an ankle bracelet, just because he felt bad for me because I was going to prison anyways.
Right.
So just like let me live with her, just so I can like not kill myself.
That actually is a tremendous amount of compassion.
Right. Right? Like
that's amazing because your family said they wanted to pull the bond.
Yeah.
Did they pull the bond?
They tried.
But they didn't.
He didn't let them. That's why this was like a whole.
What a boss,
dude! This guy. If I ever can see him and hug him, I would. Amazing judge, amazing guy. If you're ever in a situation, you can have him as a judge. Very fair. I know.
Hopefully never.
Very fair. Very fair. He writes a lot in the New York Times. He's a thought leader too. He's a thought.
What's his name?
Judge Rakoff. He writes in the New York Times. He writes a lot. He's a thought leader, writes a lot about. He's trying to get rid of sentencing guidelines. The problem is the government. The problem is that the government created these sentencing guidelines where it's like, if you did this based on this score profile, you will get this amount of time. So obviously, it so overwhelmingly puts like black people in prison because it's the scoring system is so overwhelmingly against them. You talk about being privileged, like just being white, middle class gets you like a lower score, which gets you to a better prison. Yeah. Like that's what needs to change. That will create equality.
Our
he's very,
it's
fucked up. So he's advocating for like, he's trying to get rid of the sentencing guidelines and so that's like, he's in it. So but going back to it. So here it's like, that was such an ultimate sigh of relief. And like at that point you go home and you start to like mentally and physically prepare for going to prison in 3 months.
And so what was that process and what was going away like? I know you've spoke about this before.
No, of course,
so we
of course.
Need to go deep, but it had to be such a transformative experience.
It was such a transformative experience. It was the best humility training you can ever have. You meet some crazy people, some really nice people at the same time. And it's life-changing. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, prison, at all, ever. But at the same time, prison was a gift. It was a gift that I got. And a lot of people had to suffer because of it. And I'm really sorry for that to those people. But at the same time, but like, I try to use it for all the positives like in the future. And since getting out, the whole Bitcoin and crypto industry completely took me back like with open arms. In fact, like prison probably made my career, if anything. It's allowed me to access circles and people and be able to like help make deals happen, like even peace agreements between countries. I feel like I want to get in the middle of because
well, people don't believe me that 80% of my success and wealth comes from being Bitcoin's party boy, but it's true. I had this unique angle and people wanted me around, and I got invited to dinners and I got invited to conferences and events that I wouldn't have otherwise been invited to, just doing what I was doing as an entrepreneur. Being crypto's first felon was
everyone learned from it. People were like writing me letters saying that they used to never do any KYC before, and then that day they decided to do KYC, like, actually accept
know your customer.
Yeah, know your customer, like show me your ID if I want to sell you some Bitcoin. Now that's a default.
Yeah.
No one did that ever. But when I got arrested, that was like the government, the whole industry was like, we need to actually take this seriously now. So it's if helping other people not go to jail was my legacy, then so be it. It was great. However, I thought that would be the end of it for me. I thought that was like my peak.
Yeah.
And since then, every year over year, I've just been able to do the most amazing things. The rooms that I've been in, the businesses that I've been able to start, the jobs that I've been able to bring, the people that we've been able to be a part of. I just got off a film set. My wife Courtney was in a movie, asked me to dance, full length feature. Everyone's going to see it in theaters. Hopefully in the early part of next year. And just being able to be on set with like 70 people, just watching and learning, that was such another like humbling experience. And it was so much fun. You get to do crazy things. So crypto has given me that.
I think for anyone that stuck through it, through the ups and the downs, we've all seen a good amount of wealth, but moreover, because it's now like at the heart of the zeitgeist. I mean, you felt it in Miami. I mean, it was energy. The culture. Everyone was there. Anyone who was anybody was in Miami 2 weeks ago for Bitcoin 2021. I know,
it was so intense.
And the doors that it's opened for me at every level is just extraordinary. Just being enthusiastic about this technology in the early years and struggling and not it wasn't ever easy, but it's also so worth it to see where we are now, even when there are parts of crypto I don't love today. There were parts of Bitcoin I didn't love when I got into it.
So when it's funny that you mentioned that, because when I wanted to like kind of branch out into non-Bitcoin and non-crypto things, like kind of like, I jumped in and wanted to invest in this movie a little bit, or like I wanted to get involved in some other stuff. We do coffee shop, anything, like I would get a lot of shit from Bitcoiners. Not
they're
that
like
I care.
stick to Bitcoin.
They're like stick to Bitcoin.
Yeah,
And
I get that.
but you have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because we have to challenge ourselves and we have to see it's that imposter syndrome. Maybe we did just get lucky. So we need to go out and to see if we can be successful in other things. And I still don't know if that's true yet.
Yeah, but it's honestly like the success is so much less interesting than the challenge.
Yeah, it's true.
Like
the journey and the people.
I remember the day where suddenly I was a multimillionaire because Augur's tokens got listed on exchanges. I was really like probably even
dude, you have like the craziest. You literally have, it's the first time we're doing this show. No one like you didn't even bring up Augur, and like that was so pivotal. You talk about things that I did. You gave Ethereum its right to exist. Because pre-Augur, no one knew what Ethereum was. Why should it exist? Anything. It was nothing. It was just a bunch of coders.
And it was pivotal for a lot of Bitcoiners that thought everything that wasn't Bitcoin was a shitcoin, because we wrote our first white paper on how to build a decentralized prediction market on Bitcoin. And then we tried to do it and realized you couldn't.
Yep.
And Vitalik.
It was a very hard hitting. That was the thing that progressed Vitalik. It was very hard hitting when that came out, because showed Bitcoin's limitations.
Yeah, and Vitalik was my buddy. We were the only young guys on the conference circuit. You were on house arrest, and so I got to know him. He just enthusiastic about prediction markets, and he was like, you should just try building this on Ethereum. And in retrospect, being a more grizzled entrepreneur, building a very unprecedented platform on top of an unprecedented platform that was 9 months away from launch was a stupid fucking idea. But it worked out. But it goes to show how that kind of naivete, in your case,
so we knew the technology could work. Like it worked in theory.
It sounded good. And you look at Vitalik and you're like, if anyone's going to make this work, it's going to be this kid, Because I mean, what people don't appreciate about Vitalik is that he was one of the best writers about Bitcoin. With Bitcoin Magazine, he made it make sense. The hard technical parts of Bitcoin that no one else made sense to me. When Vitalik wrote about it in Bitcoin Magazine, it made sense. I was like, this guy gets his technology at a deeper level than just about anyone.
Yes.
I mean, look, if he had been allowed, I think he could have done some incredible second layer stuff for Bitcoin, but I'm glad he created Ethereum.
It's kind of, Vitalik should be such an example of why like standardized education is so bad for us socially when we're younger, because it makes us think that we're stupid. I don't know how well you did in school, but I didn't do very well.
No.
If you judged geniuses by the things that they're bad at, you wouldn't call them geniuses, right? We'd look at Vitalik as a genius. But I remember, and I kind of tell the story on my podcast, Untold Stories, by the way, .com, that like, I remember the first time sitting with Vitalik and he didn't know how to eat a lobster. Like we were eating lobster and he didn't know how to eat the lobster. He's like, I have no idea how to do this. And here is this guy's like the godfather of this fucking technology that's about to change the world. He's like Satoshi 2. And like, but I understood because I just came off being kosher. I never knew how to do a lobster either. I still don't know how to do some types of crabs, So whatever it was, but like if you judge people based on like certain things, then no one's going to be a genius. But we're all geniuses. We're all kings. We are all kings of our own domain. We just have to figure out what that domain is.
No, I think that's a very valid point. And you know Dimitri, his father?
Yeah.
He's like
a funny character.
Like he's like this jacked, beefy dude, like doesn't look anything like Vitalik. He's like into psychedelics and like
and he trolls his son too on Twitter too.
Yeah. And he trolls the trolls, like making fun of him for being
So that's as long as we never take ourselves too seriously, then we're good.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin 2021 gave me a lot of like heart strength, because I saw how little we took ourselves seriously there. And I saw when there was so much it's so easy to like buy an article on Bloomberg, Reuters, and it's so easy right now. I can create fear, uncertainty, and doubt right now. If I wanted to, with 20 grand, I can write an article saying that like the flowers in all of Oregon have turned green in one day. I bet you I would have friends in China emailing me, "Oh my God, I heard about this," because you can do and say anything you want.
This is something that we actually kind of constantly are going back to, is this age of disinformation
But we don't care.
that we're in.
We don't care, and I love that.
Well, because we have something that's absolute. We have the math that exists in Bitcoin and blockchain technology. We have the code, the open source code. But that's very unique. If you look at what most of the internet has given us, it's actually the opposite of that. It's just unfettered access to information that's not easily validated and can be distorted to fit any sort of narrative. And that's the beauty of blockchain technology. And that's why it may be the only antidote to the Pandora's box that the internet is that it can create sources of truth.
That's really what it is. It's truth that can never be adulterated. Is that the right word to use? Adulterated. It's unadulterated truth. But it's like, it's not that you have to worry about whether the actual content is true or not. Rather, it's you trusting that the issuer of that content, that however many years have gone by, there's continuity. It's never been changed. That's what the blockchain gives us. It gives us finality.
It's not like
continuity.
Nick Szabo's blogs.
It can be changed no, but that's what it does. It gives us, and that's why like hedge funds and credit and capital markets, it's so brilliant because markets are going to go towards the most efficient. It's just money's going to move towards there's a scientific word in physics. It's not latency, but it's like the path of least resistance. It's all energy.
I failed chemistry and biology.
But all energy goes towards like the path of least resistance. It's like, it's one of the laws of physics or whatever, just like gravity and things like that. The shortest point from the shortest route from 2 points is a straight line, or the shortest distance. And so Bitcoin and then the blockchain technology, and then on top of it, newer blockchains and projects that are like building on that to fine tune, like the credit and capital markets come here, like some of these blockchains that are building out some of these like AMMs and all these other things. Like it's kind of crazy. Like, the value of like the total value locked up in like Uniswap is more than like that of Betterment. And some of these companies have taken 10, 20 years to build their $4 or $5 billion assets under management. And the beauty of it is that you don't have to trust, this is the key here. You don't have to trust the asset. It doesn't matter what the asset is that you're trading. It doesn't matter all that other stuff. But when you're holding this actual token, you know that there is no way for someone to take this token from you. It's a bearer asset where there's like full transaction finality, and that people are excited about that. And I can see why. You can do anything. You can do anything with that. With technology.
when you talk like this, I can see why the government thought you were dangerous. You make it sound so good.
It is great. Bitcoin and crypto is great.
I love Bitcoin, but you really can articulate it so well in a way that gets people excited.
But back then it was different, because now it's about all inclusion. It's about building technology for everyone. But back then, what I was saying was like, didn't really make sense, because I was just had like Roger Ver in my ear, and it was all that like anarchist, like, we don't need the government. F you, government, come at me, bro. Saying this on like Fox News. So what did they do? They came at me, bro. My own fault.
So let's talk about this, because I appreciated what you said about me about being just like unabashedly myself, and the reason for that is because I've always kind of been like that. I grew up in it. I wasn't allowed. I got in a lot of trouble. Yeah. But I was able to kind of be myself. You ask my friends that, went to elementary school with me. They're like, oh, he's still the same today. But you have had a very different life, because you have this Orthodox Jewish upbringing. Then you have this community you find online. Then you become this mega evangelist and a top entrepreneur in this burgeoning industry. Then you go to prison for 1.5 years, and now you're in what I'd say probably the most recent stage since getting out. I mean, there's probably You can
Sure.
subdivide it, but you've got these 4 very dramatic periods, and
I'm only 31.
yeah, wild. that was always what was.
I'm so tired.
I mean, I was thinking about that earlier today.
What was your
I
question?
feel like I've got decades on myself right
Yeah.
now. But talk about that transformation, because you're you're doing what I guess they call living your truth right now. But I think
Living your truth. I never heard that.
a lot of the time that I've known you, perhaps most of the time I've known you, it was more of you figuring it out. And I guess if you can introspect on such a deep existential question, but how has that journey kind of evolved your own inner sense of self? Because you said you still have low self-esteem, something I'm still dealing with, but you've definitely evolved so much as a person just in the time that I've known of you.
I've definitely become much more like willing to hopefully hear about my faults and what I'm good at and what I need to change and things like that. It's a very multi-layered answer, because there are a lot of things that I figured out about myself, and there are a lot of things that I kind of figured out in all of these periods and these transitionary periods too, about the world and my views and what I believe in the world and how the world works and how it's going to work in the future. And my views and beliefs are because we've lived this like really crazy life up until now. And I think that I'm still figuring it out. I'm still figuring it out because up until now, I've been living the life that I felt was already like predestined for me. I was living someone else's life, like the spinsters. If you read those books, or like they're spinning the threads of
The puppeteers.
the puppeteers. I felt like I was that. So just now, I feel like I'm finally cresting. Being involved in this movie and doing things for not myself, doing things for someone else, doing things for Courtney, hanging out with you. I could finally start to like figure that out.
Well, you're becoming, what makes man. But you're like becoming a man. It's not.
Yeah, I'm finally becoming a man now.
It's less about being Charlie than like settling down, and
yeah.
It's something I really admire, because going from that spotlight, obviously you did it in very dramatic fashion.
Oh my God!
But even I, as when I moved to Miami in 2018 and decided to kind of stop all the press and really just step away from crypto a bit. I was still obviously running my fund and investing, but when I did that, it was like, I almost to a certain extent wish I had just sat in a prison cell.
Yeah.
because I instead just like went to partying and women and clubbing, and which was great, but I wasn't able to do the inner work that I probably wish I could have done. You were able to come out of prison and pretty much be ready to get married. And
yeah.
I mean,
right before I was like arrested.
I mean, the fact that Courtney stuck with you through all this,
it's amazing.
Bless her soul. I mean, I've loved watching your relationship over the years, and I mean, I've been rooting for you guys since I ever met both of you. And
right before I was arrested, we were partying. We were like living above a nightclub that we owned. It was
I know,
like,
EBR. Right?
Yeah, it was
the
accepted Bitcoin.
Yeah,
but it was like living life, but not doing like the introspection and not caring, and just kind of like I had like a few $100,000 to my name, and I was like, oh, I'm rich as hell now. I could do whatever I want.
Well, 6 figures in your early 20s.
But I'll tell you,
money.
I know. But I'll tell you why I think that prison was a gift. I learned something that I got something that you could only get with old age, and that is. It's like, when you're talking and someone slaps you in the face and shut the fuck up. You're like, whoa. I got a very heavy dose of like life finality. That life is when you're 20 or 30 years old, you're not thinking about the end of your life. You're not thinking about what you need to do to be happy, to be full joyous. You're not thinking about that stuff. You're not thinking about what makes you, what makes, that life is the gift. When you're 60 years old, you're like, shit, life is the gift. Everyone's always about, I work so hard in your prime year, save money, and then you can start enjoying life when you're later. And when I was sitting in prison, I was like, damn, I just 2 years I lost. Like if this was a gift, I just lost 2 years of it, So I got this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful understanding and perspective. Yeah, that time is the only finite resource.
Right.
Time, it's not money. It's time. Use your money to give you more time to do the things that you want to do. At the end of the day, every business deal that you make, I always ask myself, okay, I'm now going to be losing time to do this. Do I want to be? Is the money worth it? Is the money worth? So it's like, that's my view on life now. It's like time is finite.
So more time on the boat, more time with the wife.
Yes.
Less
I'm
time
very
worrying about money or business.
But it's not, it's when you can say I want this hour to be the most efficient hour in the whole entire world, it then forces you to not take the shitty deal, or to not half-ass a project, or to not go all the way. I'm still so highly motivated. Go all the way with everything, unabashed.
Well, you're doing a lot.
Doing so much. And I find this motivation because I own my time. I get to choose. At the end of the day, I own my time. And no one else owns my time. I own it. I can choose it. I can step away. I can walk my dog for 5 hours.
And the federal government can take it away if they want.
They did it. They did it before. They can do it again. So it's like, I am so of owner. I guess now, according, it makes sense. I'm so protective of that ownership of time because that time was taken from me. And that was the only thing that when we're born, the only thing that we're given as a gift, the only thing that we have that is guaranteed is that time. We're not born with rights. You're not born thinking about your freedom of speech. You're born okay, there's a countdown. The minute you're born, you start dying. There's this time clock. And that is the gift. That clock that says Jeremy with a time clock, with a time code, till you die 100 years from now, everything that you do in between, that is the gift. And how you make the world a better place, and how you leave the earth better, and how you leave humanity better, society better. You have the right to that time. And then because of my own mistake, I lost that. It was taken from me. And so I'm highly protective of it now. And yeah, time is everything. Time is money, baby.
Speaking of time, what
time
is that was great. All right. Oh,
wow,
it's 2 o'clock. How
long have you been recording?
I have to go.
Thank you for doing what you're doing.
This is amazing.
When you stop, that's when I stop. Seriously,
oh, I'm never gonna stop.
Don't stop. I'll never stop.
Neither of us are ever gonna retire because we love what we do.
Yeah.
When you love what you do, you don't feel like you're working. And we have people like Courtney in our lives that keep us accountable and make sure we're spending our time in the right ways. But we'll always find ways to work, because
there's another thing. This is what I want to tell you. You have not just me, you have other people that love you, that know you, that follow you, that are following your social media. And if we ever felt that you were ever getting out of hand, we would tell you. There are people around you that care about you. There are people that care about me. I know. So don't ever worry. Live your life as unapologetically as you want.
As you learned the harder way than I did, but when you spend enough nights in a jail cell, you begin to develop these boundaries in your head.
Yeah.
It's am I pushing things too far? And that's how I've been able to do what I do with all the partying and the craziness in my life. I never go too far because I've gone too far before, and I never want to go back. But and then obviously,
but you gotta go.
I think seeing what happened with you, and obviously hearing this story has been a gentle but necessary reminder that definitely kept me and a lot of other folks out of trouble over the years. So Charlie, thanks so much for your time. I still got to come on your show.
Yes,
guys, go watch Untold Stories, untoldstories.com. It's one of the best podcasts out there.
Amazing.
Thanks so much, man.